Let's take a look at the denominational budget for the United Methodist Church for the 2025 to 2028 quadrennium. The United Methodist Church's worldwide budget, also called the General Church Budget, is based on a system of financial stewardship called apportionments. A small portion of every dollar spent at the local church level makes its way through the church structure to make a global impact. Through this model, the church supports everything from disaster relief and humanitarian aid to theological education and church development. But how is the funding distributed, and how do we know how much to budget? The United Methodist Church budget is made up of 7 apportioned funds. Apportioned giving from the jurisdictional conferences support these 7 funds, and apportioned giving by the central conferences contribute to the Episcopal and General Administration funds. The current proposed budget agreed to by the Connectional Table and General Council on Finance Administration is $353.1 million for the 2025-2028 quadrennium. $347 million of the proposed budget is apportioned to the jurisdictional conferences, which is a decrease of 43% from 2016, and the estimated central conference apportion giving is proposed at $6.1 million, a 10% reduction for 2016. Let's take a closer look at the 7 apportioned funds. The funds apportioned to Africa University are used to support education efforts on the African continent. Africa University educates nearly 3,000 students from 23 countries annually. Africa University is being recommended for a 48% decrease from 2016. This is an additional 9% decrease from what is published in the 2024 ADCA. The revised total funding received by Africa University will be $4.9 million for the coming quadrennium. The Black College Fund works to make quality education accessible for all. Established in 1972, the Black College Fund provides support to 11 historically Black colleges and universities related to the church. The Black College Fund is being recommended for a 48% decrease from 2016. This is an additional 9% decrease from what is published in the 2024 ADCA. The revised total funding for the Black College Fund will be $21.1 million for the coming quadrennium. Episcopal Fund. The Episcopal Fund provides support for the Episcopal leadership of the United Methodist Church. In the fall of 2023, the Council of Bishops requested an additional $15 million for the 2025-2028 budget. This is proposed to be funded in 2 ways. GCFA agreed to recommend a small increase to the base percentage rate in the apportionment formula to fund $7.5 million of the request. GCFA also agreed to recommend a reduction in budget allocations to the agencies participating in the Benefit Trust by $7.5 million. The Benefit Trust was established in 1996 as a fund used by general church agencies to cover employer costs related to active and retiree benefits. As these costs can be unpredictable, these dollars were set aside to make sure that our agencies could guarantee their obligations to employees for their benefits. Westpath has legislation that will put additional one-time monies into the Benefit Trust from a fund which has met its obligations. GCFA would then increase the Benefit Trust distribution by $7.5 million to agencies receiving reduced budget allocations, resulting in no additional loss this quadrennium to those agencies. The Episcopal Fund is being recommended for a 15% decrease from 2016. This is a 13% increase from what was published in the 2024 ADCA. Total jurisdictional funding for the Episcopal Fund will be $78 million for the coming quadrennium. The Central Conference Episcopal Fund apportionments for the coming quadrennium are expected to be $4.6 million. General Administration Fund. GCFA would receive a 59% decrease with total funding of $6.8 million. Archives and History would receive an almost 10% decrease for a total budget of $3.7 million. General Conference is budgeted for a 15% increase due to budgeting for a 2026 special session of General Conference, for a total of $13.6 million. The Judicial Council will receive a nearly 44% decrease for a total funding of $330,000. The Standing Committee on Central Conference Matters will receive a 6% decrease for a total of $275,000 in funding. The total General Administration Fund is being recommended for a 28% reduction from the previous quadrennium. This is an additional 12% decrease from what was published in the 2024 ADCA. Total jurisdictional funding for the General Administration Fund would be $26.7 million for the coming quadrennium. The Central Conference apportionments for the coming quadrennium are $1.6 million. The Interdenominational Cooperation Fund supports the ecumenical work of the United Methodist Church by joining our voices with those of other Christians around the world. This fund currently has excess designated funds, so GCFA is recommending the General Conference to unrestrict current designated monies that can then be used to carry out this work. As a result, this fund is recommended for a 72% decrease from the previous quadrennium. This is an additional 9% decrease from the published 2024 ADCA. Total funds for the Interdenominational Cooperation Fund is $2.2 million. The Ministerial Education Fund supports our 13 United Methodist seminaries in the United States, as well as providing programs to encourage those considering answering the call to ordained ministry, providing continued education for pastors, course of study education opportunities for local pastors, and scholarship through annual conferences. This fund is recommended for a 48% decrease from the previous quadrennium. This is an additional 9% decrease from the published 2024 ADCA. Total funds for the Ministerial Education Fund is $54.7 million. The final of the 7 funds is the World Service Fund, which supports the programmatic church agencies as well as other important groups. The Connectional Table is responsible for making recommendations on allocations for the World Service Fund, which they did through values-based budget planning, and with the acknowledgement that agencies have averaged nearly a 39% reduction in staff since 2016. The Connectional Table also took into consideration which funds could not sustain cuts and prioritized these entities, placing them as fixed charges. Being a fixed charge means those organizations receive funding in full before those ministries who get paid on ratio. On ratio charges are paid out their percentage of budgeted portions as funding is received. With so many different groups in this fund, we will look at them grouped together based on their reductions. The proposed budget moves the Connectional Table, General Commission on Religion and Race, General Commission on the Status and Role of Women, and the National Ethnic Plans to fixed charges. These entities would see less than a 1% decrease, and total funding is $26.9 million for the coming quadrennium. The other fixed charges are Interpretation Resources for United Methodist Communications, who will receive a 47% decrease in funding for a total of $762,000, and GCFA fixed charges, which will receive a 50% decrease for a total of $3.7 million. On ratio allocations in this fund are the Central Conference's Theological Education Fund that would receive a 50% decrease for a total of $5 million. The Young Clergy Initiative, which is not slated for funding as the initiative is complete. United Methodist Men, who would receive a 42% reduction for a total of $860,000. And the Contingency Fund would receive a 50% reduction for a total of $230,000. The remaining allocations are to the General Board of Church and Society, the General Board of Global Ministries, Discipleship Ministries, United Methodist Communications, and the General Board of Higher Education and Ministry. Combined, these general church agencies are being recommended for a 53% reduction for a total funding amount of $121 million. The World Service Fund is recommended for a 49% decrease. That's an additional 12% decrease from the published ADCA. Total funds for the World Service Fund is $155 million. GCFA's research has shown that operating costs for churches in the United States have remained at the same level or even increased from quadrennial budgets in the past. Combined with the decrease in giving in the local church, a shortfall has occurred for discretionary spending on programs, missions, and apportionments. Since there is less capacity to give to the general church from a local church level, this budget reflects GCFA's recommendation of a 21.2% reduction in the rate of apportionments, which would keep more money in the local church for mission.
Throughout the quadrennium and in a coordinated manner, the GCFA board, various committees, and task forces look at trends in giving, church closures, and the economy to develop what we believe to be a realistic forecast for the church's total denominational budget. The reality is that in a system where we pay to the funds mostly on ratio, we would be doing a disservice to the church if we budgeted higher than what we believe to be accurate to what the funds can expect to receive. But we as a church can come together and give abundantly to create a season of plenty in a time of need. GCFA would be thrilled to disseminate those additional funds to ministry.
The creation of this budget has required diligent work, compromise, innovation, and prayer for many years. Now in the hands of our General Conference, we pray for God's blessing on the work we do together to further the kingdom.
This video was prepared for the United Methodist Connection in anticipation of the upcoming General Conference. For more information on GCFA's data-driven discernment campaign, visit gcfa.org/General Conference.